Welcome, everybody, to the Ever Evolving Truth. It's been a couple days, but thanks for hopping on and joining us here. I'm here with a friend of the show, Jordan Henning. How are you, Jordan?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you, man?
I am fucking exhausted. Uh, I think I've watched 72 straight hours of news. I mean, I'm not even joking. I have it on when I go to bed, so I can hear it in the background. Like if I'm going up for breakfast, it's on my phone. I've had, when we were broadcasting live all day, I had the TVs upstairs, tuned to different stations. Like obviously, you and I are what they would describe as political junkies. Leah is too, but I'm a whole other level of obsessed. Like this was super important,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because technically, we still don't have a president elect. And I don't know. I was trying to think back, like 4 years ago, how long it took them to officially call Donald Trump the winner. But I think it was the next day. I think they had enough information where they could call Donald Trump the winner the next day. At least the news networks. Now, obviously, to certify the actual votes takes 2 weeks in any election, at least.
Yeah. It was definitely after midnight, but it happened that night. I remember because, like I said last time when we were on the show, I think it was Tuesday night. Um, I had passed out drunk because I usually passed out around 10 o'clock back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I woke up that night for some reason at like 12:15, and I remember at that point he had definitively earned like the majority, the 270, and the outstanding states were the ones that pushed him to 306. So he was the presumptive president elect that night after midnight because he won all of the major states. There were no mail-in ballots. There was nothing holding up the election to a considerable degree. There was no lawsuits being filed. What I think took longer last time in that vein is that Hillary didn't concede until the next night. Normally the two campaigns, at least in the presidential history that I recall, it probably excluding 2000 with the vote count,
Right.
in Florida. Usually the two campaigns will call each other. The loser gives the concession speech, and then on all the major networks, and then the president elect will give his like acceptance, thankful, what call it a gratitude speech or whatever, like, to officially take over the helm. And then at that point, they probably give it a week for the votes to be counted legally and for it to be lawfully enacted. Because I do think they have to like do some type of legislation on like certification that the vote counts are correct
Right.
and stuff like that. And they have to tabulate that and document it and everything. And
And that
then
and that's all stuff that we don't pay attention to as a regular
Right,
everyday
because all
American.
we care about is presumptive and all we care about is the 270. I mean, that's really what the election is. And that's, even going into campaigning, like they only campaign in areas and with, data analytics coming into the equation since probably, I would say, solidly the 2008 election. Facebook had been around for 4 years already. Instagram, I think, was just starting up around that time. So like, with metadata, comprehensive metadata analytics that they use now, they can literally hone in on like county by county areas that they know they need to push the vote, increase their, like what Alex said on Tuesday, like to lose less or to win more and like drive up the vote,
Right.
to carry those margins. That's what, a lot of TEET voters this might be the first election they're taking really deep concern over or following very closely. You probably heard John King and the guy from MSNBC. I forget. Somebody said he deserves an Oscar or an Emmy for everything. But like they said, margins
Right.
over and over again. Like, what are these margins that they're talking about? Well, it's all statistics. It's based on like statistics. And I mean, I could go into more of the data analysis part of it. But if you are in any type of science that uses data collection with statistical analysis, you should be able to understand it. Margins are similar to like standard, like not a standard deviation. I'm trying to think of what the other one is, where they say like plus or minus 3%, but then you have to apply that to like the outstanding votes that
Right.
are still there, and then compare it to the votes you still have, and it gives you like this other percentage that shows what will be needed or necessary to not affect the votes that you have already. And as long as that margin, it stays within that margin range, what it statistically essentially says is that it doesn't matter if this vote carries the margin, right? If it stays within this margin, the state will not flip. Like,
Right.
period, every vote, it has no way that it's going to change the outcome of the vote, like the outstanding votes. And that's how they can call certain states so early.
And
Like
that's
that's how,
what we saw in 2016.
yeah, and
Because I
that's how,
remember John King going through the magic board.
yeah,
The focus was on Florida because, again, same thing. He would pull up the counties, say, "Look, these are where most of the votes are, but the votes coming in, they're not coming in with enough of a percentage to gain on Donald Trump in Florida,
right,
like Hillary was,
right,
or to enough of a gain to overtake his lead." So that's what that was a great example in 2016. Flash forward. Now we're going back to the same big board, and we're looking at these gigantic, insurmountable, or what looks to our eyes, or the layman, these insurmountable leads that Donald Trump has. And I'll admit, even though I understand, not like you do or someone who has studied statistics, but I understand how the math works to someone. Not that I can do it myself, but I'm
yeah, I
sitting there
can't
and
do it
I'm
myself either.
sweating. I'm sweating my ass off. I'm like, here we go, 2016 again. But we're looking at these insurmountable leads, and the fact of the matter is, so many people decided to vote by mail, overwhelmingly Democrat,
Yep.
and that's not just me saying that. It's fucking fact. 80-20 roughly in favor of Joe Biden. And that is a result of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris going around the country saying, look, it's okay, it's safe. If you don't feel comfortable standing in line with a bunch of people who don't believe in science and masks, it's perfectly safe to mail in your ballot, via the USPS, or drop it at a drop box on your way to work. Meanwhile, the other campaign is saying it's a fraud. They're gonna steal your vote. It's not gonna count. Don't do it. And we give a lot of shit to the mainstream media, more so from the other side, calling it fake news. Let's give them credit here. What happened is exactly what they said was going to happen 3 fucking weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
This red mirage, and then the votes were, all of the votes were going to get counted. What was remaining was the mail-in votes and I will point out, Republican legislators in Wisconsin, in Michigan, and in Pennsylvania did not allow them to be counted until after the in-person vote was counted, and we got exactly what they predicted was going to happen.
Yeah, and that's why also, conversely, like you do mention the red mirage, and I can honestly say that I was, on Tuesday night, I was quite disheartened because I kind of didn't think of the red mirage that was happening. But there was also, conversely, like in some of the other states, there was a blue mirage at first. And I think that is what we saw in Ohio and Texas. Yeah. They allowed a lot of their counting in certain districts to be done ahead of time. And we didn't get that trickle of mail-in ballots that had to be opened, processed, and counted by hand. We were getting a trickle of all of the votes being counted in person. So it appeared at first that we had this huge push of blue, and we did. I mean, he only lost by like 400,000 votes or something like that, which in Texas is insane. I think Trump in 2016, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it was more than 5 percentage points, I think, that he beat Hillary by statewide. So to reduce it from 5 points to like a point or a point and a half is a big shift. But yeah, it was disheartening. And what I was going to say, or the point I was trying to get to, other than the fact that we just see breaking news out of CNN that we can talk about in a minute. But what I was saying, or what they have been saying, John King especially, he's been making it very well known. And I know Breonna Keeler, I primarily watch CNN. They've been saying that Trump did this to himself.
Oh yeah.
That if they hadn't been pushing the mail-in ballots are fraudulent, your vote won't get counted, you have to vote in person. The margins that we're seeing, or the percentages of votes that we're seeing in these mail-in ballot counts, would have not been as big as they are, because they're saying in PA all of the ballots that had to get counted afterwards, it was something like 1.5 million, and it's seeming that in most counties where they're counting these mail-in ballots, Biden is winning the mail-in race like by, it's like 80-20
It is.
or 85-15.
Even in the counties that Trump is carrying by 30 or 40 points, the mail-in ballots coming from there are 80-20 in favor of Biden.
Right.
And just to your point, Jordan, even if Trump did come and he was a reasonable human being and said, look, go ahead and vote however you want to, whatever you're comfortable with. We prefer you to come out, and do it in person. But if you feel more comfortable voting by mail, go ahead and do so. Even if those margins were tighter, what people don't understand is it wouldn't have changed the outcome of this election. It just would have been counted differently, and we wouldn't see the drastic come from behind or seemingly come from behind victory. In most cases, these mail-in ballots were cast long before your in-person vote. So, if anything, Trump came from behind a little bit.
Right. And that's an amazing and a spot on segue to the breaking news that I just saw to CNN. And that is that the U.S. Supreme Court, SCOTUS, has ordered Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania Secretary of State, to separate and count out all of the ballots that arrived after Election Day. Now, PA state law is written that anything, it's good as long as it arrives by 8 p.m. the third day post-election. So that would be it's either last night or tonight. It's either 2 or 3 days.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, it's 3 days.
Right. So so I don't know if that means by Tuesday, like 3 days from the beginning of the day of the election. So that would be Thursday night. Whatever. What's up, Scott? But you made a good point to argue that even if SCOTUS somehow completely, even though it has 3 solid originalists, or people at least who call themselves originalists, even though they have 3 originalists, the SCOTUS could take this and somehow trample all over the 10th Amendment, saying that states are allowed to determine and tally their votes however they want to. I mean, we can look at the way it's listed, but I know that collecting, organizing, and counting votes is up to each individual state. That's why we have so many of these races where it takes not very long at all in some states and a lot longer in others. But what I'm saying is, you made a good point, and I don't think we need to be worried about the SCOTUS intervention. Because of the first point I made, which is that they're not going to step on the 10th Amendment like this. It'll set off a firestorm of states' rights issues. But also because the vast majority of those mail-in ballots, I can almost guarantee, were there before Election Day. Out of all of those 1.5 million, right, that PA had to count, how many of them were not there by Election Day, considering that they told us on Election Day they had 1.5 million ballots to count?
Well, it was even more than that. It was like 2.5 million. They had 1.5 million left to count, I believe. So that's okay. Part of it.
So through the first million.
Yeah. So everything that you're hearing, the specific ballots that they're talking about, because this has been talked about all day, are just coming in now in the past few days. All the ones that they finished up counting already were already in before or on Election Day. So the SCOTUS can't even touch those. So exactly. Biden already has the lead. They can't take away anything that's been counted from him.
Right.
All they can do is stop the bleeding, if you will. If they throw out those ballots, number one, it's a fucking atrocity, and you need to rise up and make your voice heard even more next time, because this is bullshit. And this is why every election counts, and you shouldn't just come out for one. When it matters the most, because all of them matter the most. But the bottom line is this is a child flailing about because someone took away his toy, and he's not ready to be done playing yet. That's all it is. Because if he's going to make the argument the ballots shouldn't be counted after they come in Pennsylvania, that hurts his chance of coming back in Arizona.
Well, no, that's the thing. Is that right now, as it sits, Nevada and Arizona can't be challenged. So even if Georgia and Pennsylvania are somehow thrown out or overturned, Biden still wins 270 to 268.
Yep.
Because he's guaranteed to win. Michigan is outside the margin. Wisconsin is inside the margin for a recount, but it's 20,000 votes. They're not alleging any impropriety. They're alleging they just are within their right to ask for a recount. Right. And those are two completely different things. You could ask any state that I think if it falls within 2 percentage points, you can ask for a recount. Most of the times they don't, because when you're talking about 4 or 5 million votes, 1 or 2% is 100,000, 100,000 or at least like 10 or 15,000. I think it's 10,000 per 1 million or something like that.
Something like that. And historically, recounts only change like 100 or so votes, in either direction. So it's not.
Scott Walker, he texted out in 2011. They had a recount in Wisconsin, and it was 121 votes, and none of the votes changed.
Right.
Like they recounted and nothing changed, and it was 121, and now we're talking about 20,000. So I mean, some people I think were probably like a little, apprehensive, but I called it this morning. As soon as Georgia and PA went, I know Jeff, I know you commented on one and then liked the other one pretty quick, but it was like 6:15 or 6:30. I saw Georgia went, and I was like, oh my God, Georgia went blue. And then I did the same thing for PA. I said PA went blue. And about 30 minutes later, once those things started staying and they weren't swaying back and forth and alternating who had the most votes, I said Biden's going to win, because they were talking margins the whole time, and I understand how that works.
Yeah, and it's only
one of those things.
And let's be clear, Georgia there's still an outside chance that Georgia could swing back red, but it would have to be because the accumulation of all the outstanding military and provisional ballots were for Trump. An overwhelming majority of them would have to be that way. And that is fine. I mean, clearly I want it to be blue, but it doesn't matter, because there's no chance in hell that Pennsylvania is swinging back red. It's not going to happen. And that's all Biden needs is Pennsylvania.
It's CNN says 19,491 and counting. Nevada's 22,657. That's outside of recount, because Nevada only has about 1.2 million votes or 1.3 million votes. So that's outside of that percentage range.
And their last dump was Arizona. Heavily. Nevada's
Arizona's at 36,835. Wisconsin's at 21,000, I think, still, but that's huge. And then Michigan is way out now. It's like 47, 48,000. There's no inside a recount. And even Georgia being 4,000, that's a lot. That's insurmountable. I mean, unless there's some way that they can invalidate them somehow, which is a complete pipe dream at this point. It's just the wet dream of Trump supporters right now, the incels and the other, bottom feeders that support him. It's never going to happen. I agree with Abby.
Me too.
I think Abby makes a good point with this. Sorry, Abigail. I don't know you, but I'm assuming Abigail. I don't know which one.
This is Greg's wife.
Okay. That's what I thought. I think I knew that part, but I just didn't know. Yeah, I don't see him giving a concession speech. I really don't. I absolutely don't. I think it's outside of his narcissism.
Yeah, he's a prick. He's a fucking prick, is what he is.
Whether
you agree with his policies or not, he's a fucking prick. And just listening to the reports coming out of each camp, the difference in what is going on. The Joe Biden spending time with his family and advisors, meeting about the coronavirus, which is out of control right now. It didn't go away on Wednesday. Where are the people that said it was going to go away? It was a political ploy. They just get away with it. Like, this is what drives me insane, Jordan. It drives me insane that nobody is held accountable for what they say. But Biden's spending time with his family, being a reasonable human being, coming out, addressing the people, telling them to stay calm. This is a process. Nothing is, there's no treachery afoot here. It's just, we have to count all the votes. He doesn't even mention Trump. Trump comes out. He makes this. Did you see his speech yesterday?
No, I was at a meeting for a personal meeting. Wink, wink. And I
Fox
got
News
back and
cut him
I was
off.
reading about it. I was like, what the hell just happened?
Fox News cut him off because it was nothing but lies. Fox
Mm-hmm.
News, who invented lying,
Mm-hmm.
is cutting
Yeah.
off the guy that they support, unequivocally. Just it's insane. And then today they were talking about how it's complete chaos. Like his handlers, like he's got like 12 parents that are all around him trying to convince him, like, dude, this is over. And he's screaming and throwing a hissy fit, and they describe the White House as chaos.
Yeah.
How can you support this man after what you just saw? Like, if people aren't saying, I would like to take my vote back, I would,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not saying that and you voted for Trump, you are a psychopath. It's insane.
Or willingly ignorant, or just categorically in denial, right? I think that's
Yeah.
the other thing, is like, I don't know if it's like subclinic or like subconscious like racism, that people hated Obama for so many reasons. And you know me, I was never like on the Obama train. I liked what he did. I thought that there were things that were wrong and that he could have done better. You know,
Sure.
I had my
No
fair
doubt about it.
criticisms of him, as I did with most other presidents, you know, but he was human. He was a human. Like when he sang, what was it, Amazing Grace
Mhm.
at the church in South Carolina, after that, you know, Dylan, I hate saying his name, but the
Right.
Dylan
Yeah.
guy shot up at the you know, the third, what was it, 30 some black people at the church in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, what has Trump done that even comes close to showing you 1 ounce of humanity, empathy, or compassion for another
Exactly.
person?
You're
Like,
exactly right, and that's what I say. Like, even if you compare, uh, even if Joe Biden and Donald Trump were comparable as far as their ineptitude to do the job, the fact that Biden is a good, decent man, he's felt loss like all of us have felt. He can show compassion and empathy, makes him a president 10 times, 100 times, a million times the level
yeah.
of Donald Trump, just
And
for
not
those
only
reasons alone.
that, he has overcome some significant, huge personal adversity. I mean, to be a stutterer and then to go into the public sphere where you are giving speeches 8, 10, 12 times a year, if not 8 or 10, 12 times a weekend. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That's a good one. Count all the votes. Stop counting the votes. Yeah, they
Right.
can't make up their mind. But that's the thing. Trump, as a grandiose narcissist born with a silver spoon embedded up his ass, has never experienced anything that could be considered adversity. Anything that came down the plate as adversity, he lied, cheated, stole, or bought his way out of. Daddy's money got him out. Daddy's money got him into college. Daddy's money got him into grad school. Daddy's money got him out of the Vietnam War. Daddy's money gave him his start in his business. And this is the one thing that most people don't realize. Trump likes to say that his dad, that Trump started this empire with a $1 million loan from his father. That is absolute bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
because Trump took that $1 million and did pretty good with it. Like he made money, ignoring the fact that he filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcies for multiples of his business, I think at least 7 times. What most people don't realize is that Trump himself, his father was a huge kind of like slumlord in
Yep.
Manhattan. So he had a lot of equity capital, whatever you want to call it, in his properties. And what most people don't realize is Trump inherited almost 400 million from his father when his father passed away.
Yep.
And someone did like an extrapolation analysis, or whatever, like interest type thing, and they looked at when Trump's father died and the amount of money that Trump got, and then brought it out to whatever year the study was done, and it went from 400 million to like 8.3 billion just based off of inflation and carried interest and all that kind of stuff. At the time, Trump was only worth on paper about 3 billion. So he was terrible. If he had just put that money in a bank account and just let it accrue interest, carry interest, and use a standard investment strategy that anyone with a bulk amount of money would use,
Right.
he would have been wealthier than he was as a businessman. As a businessman, he actually lost $5 billion when you count for inflation. And that's his personal assets, ignoring his Chapter 11 bankruptcies. Right? That's a huge deal. So most of these people think that he's such a good businessman. He's a reality show character. And
Right.
he was before The Apprentice, and he has never been anything but since then.
Correct. And his whole life, and you can argue that his whole life before that was a reality show, doing the appearances with Howard Stern, the Playboy Mansion. It was all appearance. This guy, and look, if any one of us was given $421 million, if we made just one obvious decision with it, we could be worth more money in 10, 20, 30 years than we were when we actually got it. And people also forget that Trump Sr. was maybe an even bigger piece of shit than Donald Trump. He or Trump's dad, I guess it's not a senior, but he started giving his kids, he started writing checks and having his kids technically, I guess, on the payroll or writing it out to trust, $80,000 here, $150,000 here to avoid paying taxes. So and he started that when the kids were like 3 months old. So Trump was getting this money, this free money. Like if people handed me money like that, I could do something with it too. And I wouldn't rip people off. I wouldn't start fake universities, just investing in real estate alone and holding on to it. If you did it back there, if you've invested all that money that he received from dad and invested it all in real estate, which he kind of did, but didn't do anything with it and just sat on it for 50 years, he would be worth more than he is now without any of the bankruptcies. It's like,
especially because, I mean, most people who know even just a little bit of history know that the vast majority of New York, Manhattan included, was a pretty big shithole in the 60s and 70s. It wasn't a nice place to live.
No.
It wasn't what it is now. It was kind of Sin City of the East, I think people had described it at that point,
Right.
Or once Vegas became Vegas, they would look back and say stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of these conspiracy theories, because I think I don't know how many people listen to the show anymore. Since we switched to this format for many reasons, because I know a lot of them were on the conservative side, a lot of Trump supporters, if they still listen. Congratulations, guys. I appreciate you dealing with, especially me and Leah ranting about him almost every week. But at least you're open to hearing what we have to say. If not, if you're gone, that's fine. But there still might be a group of listeners out there that may not, or may see something being spread and have some fear, like, oh, is there really fraud going on? So I know one of the big conspiracy theories I've been seeing is the vote, the election stopped overnight. Well, the election stopped at when the polls closed in their respected states. That's when the election was over. Like in Pennsylvania at 8 p.m., the election was over, and no more votes were cast after that. The counting might have stopped because human beings have to fucking sleep.
Yeah.
But these people were upset because I think it was in Michigan. They saw a spike in like 138,000 votes went to Joe Biden and 0 went to Donald Trump. Again, we kind of explained how this works. At that point, they were counting mail-in ballots overnight. There was no more in-person voting going on, or very little. But what it ultimately came down to, it was a clerical error that they fixed. So everybody that you're seeing talking about, oh my God, this, how could 138,000 votes go to Donald Trump and 0 go to Donald Trump? That's impossible. Yeah, but they fixed it. Why are you leaving that part out?
So yes, I remember that one, and I knew that PolitiFact did a truth-o-meter on it. So we can talk about that one first, because I have the article brought up already. This one is unequivocally 100% false. It said the screenshot showed a change in the vote tallies as they appeared on the election maps, and that Biden appeared a sudden influx of 138,339 votes. Um, but let's see what it says. In reality, the influx of the votes for Biden referenced in the social media post were the result of a data error. And I believe the Secretary of State for Pennsylvania, the other day I was watching it. She was being interviewed, and MSNBC was airing it. And a reporter asked her about a similar something in Lancaster County, where Lancaster County had a data entry system that they were tracking their vote tallies in, and then they would upload periodically that data to the Pennsylvania centralized system that the state runs. And for some reason, the formatting was different, and things got entered into the wrong areas because the two programs, unlike, say sending it from an Excel spreadsheet to an Excel spreadsheet, these two programs weren't communicating with each other. And obviously a written program that does something like data analytics can't be adaptive. It can't look at that data and say, oh, wait, that's that, and I need to put it over here. It just puts it where it's being told to put it. So what happened was, and I guess this Michigan thing is the same thing. You have these county level votes because counties oversee their votes, and those systems were not perfectly matched with the state systems, and data got uploaded incorrectly. But it's one of those things. As soon as data is uploaded incorrectly, it gets fixed. And this is the other part of this thing too, is that would have never made it out to an official ballot count, right? Those are just data tracking software that gets reported so that the public can stay up to date as it is being reported. That is not the official ballot count that gets submitted. As I said earlier, that they have this large scale submission of these legitimate ballot counts that have to get certified by the federal government, by the Federal Election Commission. They have to look at all of this stuff. So the fact that it was shown up in a column and someone screenshot it and it was fixed within an hour, but that it wouldn't have had any actual impact on the election, because that's not what the state uses to tabulate the votes that get reported to the federal level. It's just a monitoring system so that people can see what's happening. And obviously they saw what's happening and it was corrected.
Right.
So there's no there, as someone, I don't even remember who, but someone famously said, there's nothing there. It's this screenshot, image capture, image manipulation, video manipulation world, and people get sucked into it because, I mean, I could start talking about the psychological surveys and assessments that show that screen time is similar to cocaine usage and lighting up the areas of our brain that are involved with addiction. But that's a conversation for another day. But that's what a lot of people are. We feed on this constant need for attention, not attention, but like interaction with something. And also we have this prevalence to believe that we are not at fault for the problems in our lives. So if we're presented with information that there might be this big bad conspiracy theory that's kicking us down, that it's somehow not our fault. And we can, say that, the things in our life aren't a big deal.
Yeah, you hit so many points there, and I think the one that I want to focus on is you're right. Like, so someone sees this screenshot, someone else posts it and says, "Look at the fraud here," with no other context or explanation. Then they say, "You know what?" They think in their mind, maybe it's subconsciously, maybe they don't think this out loud, but they say, "You know what? If I share this, all my Trump friends are going to love it." Mm-hmm. And then if a libtard comments on it, we'll all gang up on him, and that's fun. And that's what it comes down to. The idea that they call, I think some people call it, what is it?
Confirmation bias
or vote farming.
Okay. Yeah, like farming. Yeah.
But in this case, they're calling it vote farming. They're saying that they stopped counting. Pennsylvania stopped counting. They filled out a bunch of ballots, and then they started counting again. Like, it's insanity, because if you can't simply apply the same merit to an Arizona where the president's saying no fraud there because he's catching up, he might win it still. Keep counting. Oh, Pennsylvania, here's fraud. So you're telling me that what's going on in Pennsylvania is fraud, but what's happening in Arizona is not fraud. And then to talk about like this big grand conspiracy to get Trump out of office, you're telling me that the Republican governor of Georgia, the Republican Secretary of State, and the Republican head of elections are all in on this liberal conspiracy theory to kick Trump out of office. Like that's what you're telling me. That's the best you got.
Yeah, it's sad.
And then the whole I don't even want to address this, but I have to. Like the whole dead people voting. Like, is this comes up every 4 years? Dead people voting, and in this case, there is a possibility because didn't some, like, I think we were talking about this on election night. Like some dead guy got elected to state legislature office. So someone fills out their ballot, dies from COVID 3 weeks later. Yeah, a dead person technically voted, but they voted when they were alive. Like, yeah, these things happen, but they're more than not, they're caught within the same methods that you just mentioned. They have this tracking software. They know, like, when you scan a ballot or when you scan a vote, an in-person vote, and something doesn't match up, it gets flagged, and then there's a whole team of people that look at it. Both Republican and Democrats get to look at that and say, "Oh, wait, this can't count," or "Oh, this isn't a big deal, and we can let it through."
Yeah, I mean, there's always one or two things that happen here and there. I mean, and even the Secretary of State for Pennsylvania admitted it. They were like, "We have one instance. It was a gentleman who tried to drop off the ballot of his grandmother, who filled the ballot out prior to the election with the intention of sending it and having her vote counted, and she died. So he went to drop it off, right, thinking that she's the one that cast it and filled it out, so I'm going to drop it off. And they picked it up literally right away because he couldn't even get past the screening process that you need to drop off a drop-off ballot. So, like, he couldn't even get away with it, to the point where they caught him before the vote had even entered the system of all of the checks and balances that you just described. Like when they're actually being counted, like they didn't even put it in the box that's labeled "count this." Like, it was immediately thrown out,
right?
Because it wasn't his ballot. Like,
because people have tried it before. They're aware of it. They know it's going to happen. They're looking for it, and it's just a testament to really the last bipartisan institution we truly have, other than maybe like the FBI or the CIA, a truly bipartisan institution where you see Republicans and Democrats working together because they care so much about the integrity of the voting process in this country. And we got to thank the people that continue to work tirelessly to count every single vote, count fairly, and make sure every vote is legal. And that's just that's good to see. That's a great segue into, we talked a little bit about this before we came on, but I want to feel great. I want to feel amazing. I want to, we beat Donald Trump, this guy. Hopefully we learn from this, and we will never elect anybody like him again. Hopefully we can take some measures to ensure that nobody like this can ever rise to power again. Like, you should be able to pass a basic civil service test or something in order to run for public office, and he wouldn't be able to do that, clearly. But I don't feel great about this, Jordan. I don't. I mean, first of all, it looks like, if we run through it, by Trump's definition, this could end up, and it's very likely to end up, a landslide, especially in, as far as modern day elections go. It's very likely that Joe Biden will win the popular vote by over 5 million people. And it's very likely that he will top 300 electoral votes. Mm-hmm. But that's not discounting the fact that Trump is also likely to surpass 70 million votes. Mm-hmm. How in the past 4 years have more people not left this guy? In fact, he increased his turnout. The only reason we won this presidential election is because Democrats finally showed up to the polls, whether that's because they didn't have to actually go in person and they could write it in, which Republicans are mad about. But if that's the ticket, we have to save the sanctity of that and make sure it's available for every election, because man, half of this country is so divided. Half of this country is just is okay with what they saw take place over the past 3 days, and that's Donald Trump throwing a fucking hissy fit because he's losing.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that this election elucidated is that most people are not last minute voters, right? There are millions of people in this world, in the United States, who feel absolutely comfortable making their decision on who they're going to vote for weeks ahead of time, right? That nothing that they see is going to change that in the weeks. And my protestation with voting is, why the hell is it one day?
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Why do we not have like an entire week? And then maybe the vote counters can count votes as they come in. Maybe they can be live checked so that any case of voter fraud is caught in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it need to be done in one day? Set up the polls for a week. Set up the polls for 2 weeks, right? Have more poll workers work. Have more poll workers work the polls when they're open, right? Pay them more, right? Whatever they get paid. I don't know if they even get paid. I mean, they have to
Like
get paid
it's
something.
minimum wage.
Yeah, something like that. But it's just one of those things. Just think, if we could just take $1 billion out of the incredibly, insanely bloated military budget and say, here's $1 billion, give it out to states by proportion of population, and help get your voting systems up to date.
Right.
Develop a plan, open polls. And the other thing is, hey, maybe take another, say, 10 billion and institute a nationwide voter ID program where when you get registered to vote automatically at the age of 18, you are sent a federal voter ID in the mail with your picture on it, taken from the state rolls, and you have that card. And it gets automatically sent to you every 2 years with an updated thing, and you can make changes on a government-run website portal that will send you new cards and everything done for free. Why? Because it's what it should be. We are a democracy. Everyone should have the ability to vote freely. Everyone should be able to have the ability to walk up, maybe even make the card swipeable. Swipe, enter, vote, submit. Boom, done. How are you, you know what I mean? Like this is something, we are in the 21st century. I can call someone on the other side of the world with a video chat with high def resolution on a screen that's 4 inches across, 4 inches wide, and we can have a conversation. And you're telling me we can't come up with some type of system to make this easier on everybody?
Right. And you know what? Like it would even be cheaper to just have an app on your phone. Like that should be ID enough. If you can scan your phone and it's linked to a like you said, a government-run website that keeps track of who's a legal citizen, who's eligible to vote, and who's not based on, whatever the criteria is, that should be enough. That's all you need. Mm-hmm. And for the people that don't feel comfortable with that, still mail out a ballot to every single person in this country. If you want to mail it in, mail it in. Do it in a timely manner. If you want to drop it off on your way to work, drop it off. If you want to surrender it and vote in person, you still have that right too. There's nothing wrong with multiple ways to vote. I love seeing how many people showed up to vote this time. But the sinking feeling that we're such a divided country still. And some of the polls are going to come back and we're going to look at them and study them and say, well, maybe we're not that divided. It's just like people really don't understand who represents their best interest. Like, how can you be, like we talked about this, you said, 72% of people are in favor of some sort of government-run healthcare? 72%. Yeah. Right. So why are some of those 72% voting for a Republican candidate that has come out and said, absolutely not, that's socialism, I'll never support that? Like, what is the reasoning behind that? So, it leads me to the next thing. Like, now, Tuesday night, I still haven't gone through the footage and stuff yet from Tuesday night, where we have almost 8 hours all day, but like there's 4 hours at least of me and you just totally disengaged from the conversation, just staring at CNN with this look on our face, like, oh my God, it's happening again. But one of the most disheartening things about that night was learning that we're losing seats, a bunch of seats in the House, and we're not going to get anywhere close to flipping the Senate. Now, with everything that happened in Georgia, again, we saw a little bit of a red mirage, a little bit, not the same as Biden catching up, but we see that Kelly won in Arizona, beat Martha McSally, so we picked up one seat in the Senate, which, say what you want, it's not easy to do this day and age as far as the Senate goes. One seat is normally considered a pretty decent midterm if you pick up one seat in the Senate,
Yeah.
But it looks like we do have a chance. It's still maybe a slim chance to pick up these two seats that are going to a runoff in Georgia. Not likely to pick up both of them, not likely to pick up either of them, but it's still a chance. And look, the fact that it looks like Biden's going to win Georgia, I mean, we have an army of people that we can send there for the next 2 months. We can send Kamala Harris there. We can send Joe Biden there. We know that they support him, and we can send Stacey Abrams there. We can send Bernie Sanders there. I mean, we can bring so much attention to this special election coming up. These two special elections.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get the turnout the vote, and we would still be able to flip the Senate. Well, not flip it, but bring it to even, so that Kamala Harris can break any sort of vote. But even if we just win one of those, I would be okay. A 51-49 split Republican. I'm okay with divided government, and I still think that there's a chance that you could bring over Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski and bring them over. They're reasonable Republicans. You can bring them over and still have Kamala Harris break a tie if need be. So I think there's some hope, but and I know that the House, we're going to redraw the districts this year in a lot of states, in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. We're going to redraw the severely gerrymandered districts. So in 2 years, it's going to be a favorable map for Democrats. It was, we won a lot of traditionally Republican seats in the House after the 2018 midterms, which was an actual blue wave, a complete refute against Trump and his policies. People wanted to check on Trump, and they used the House to go. Now I feel like they knew that Joe Biden was going to win, but they just don't trust liberals. They just don't trust them to legislate. So now we're going to sit here for the next 2 years at least, and we're going to, the right is going to blame Joe Biden for the deficit. They're going to blame him. Trump's tax plan is about to kick in, the part that nobody read, no Republican will admit to, is about to kick in, where next year anybody making under $65,000 a year, their taxes are going to start to go up a little bit until 2027. They're going to blame that on Joe Biden. They're going to blame everything on Joe Biden. The only thing that he's going to be able to do is it's big, but nobody pays attention to it, is reestablish some reasonable foreign policy. Get back into the Paris, Accords.
Climate Accord,
get back the Iran deal. All that. Resume the military exercises in South Korea, all that kind of stuff. But man, I just don't. I know I talked a lot there. I just don't feel great about this election. I don't.
It doesn't. I mean, I don't feel great about it for a different sense, and that's again, we talked about this, I think, before the show, or it was mentioned. But just the fact that 70 million people could vote for that clown, right? Like, I thought that this was going to be a definitive repudiation of the Trump administration by us being able to take like the borderline red states that you see coming in, 52 to 48 type thing, like your Florida, your Texas. That's where my hope lay, was the fact that I thought there were going to be enough reasonable people who identify as Republicans to say this is atrocious. Like, what has been going on is horrible, right? But it wasn't that. It was I forget the word for it, but it's like they're so holding on to their denial that Trump is somehow their savior, and that is what we need because they, quote, suffered for 8 years under Obama. Right. Which is funny because I don't recall anybody really complaining that much about how Obama was so terrible for the country. He
wore a tan suit. That was a big scandal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The tan suit. That was terrible. And he used Grey Poupon mustard. What a fucking asshole.
What an elitist fuck.
Yeah, that elitist prick, Grey Poupon. And he's a Muslim, but he loves beer and eats bacon too,
Right.
you
And
know.
smokes a cigarette occasionally.
Oh, yeah.
And owns a dog, you know.
And what an unchristian man who's been married to one woman for 30 plus years.
Right. And a good,
God,
great father.
that's a terrible Christian right there. He actually goes to church. He actually had a minister who knew him by first name. That's a terrible Christian right there.
I know. It's, we're never going to be able to get past the hypocrisy, but or the double standard. There's always going to be that group of people. I just thought that there was much less, and maybe there still is, but like some of these exit polls that are surprising, it has to be a wake up call for Democrats. And you don't consider yourself a Democrat. I don't really I consider myself a progressive. When people call me a progressive as an insult, I laugh at them like, oh, I'm sorry that I want the country to move forward in a positive direction.
Right.
That's what progress means, you fucktard.
Yeah.
But it's like, the Democratic Party pisses me off so bad, and I get it. It looks like sort of the right decision to run Joe Biden because he's a stopgap until the next person emerges, I guess. But we need somebody exciting, and maybe Joe Biden can unite the country a little bit. I hope he can. He's saying all the right things. He's talking about being a president for all of the people, even the people that didn't vote for him. Trump never said anything like that. If he did, he certainly didn't show it through any of his actions. So I hope. And maybe that's all Joe Biden will be able to do for the next 2 years is essentially just talk to people, because certainly Mitch McConnell's not going to agree to pass anything unless we by some miracle we get these 2 extra seats. But but some of the more interesting polls coming out of this are like the Latino vote. Like the Democratic Party has to start to understand that it's not, well, one Latino is just every Latino. Like there are 100 different types of Latinos out there, and all of them care about certain issues very, very deeply. Like, it's so fascinating talking about how poorly he did with Latinos in Miami. And Miami is a Democratic stronghold, but he did horrible in Miami. But at the same time, he did very good in Arizona with Latinos, 2 different, type of people. Just like you and I, we agree on a lot of things, but when it comes to a certain issue, you might find it more important than I do. Like Democrats have to get their head around this idea that our coalition is very, very diverse, and you have to take the extra time and the money to talk to those people as individuals and not just as one whole group of people.
Yeah, I think it's a branding and a communication issue, honestly, at this point. So many people are so fed up with the fact that politics are somehow, it's all old white men who are trying to, bring socialism to the country. When in fact, the most progressive, the most politically active, the most influential, it's young people, it's young BIPOC people, it's young LGBT people, it's all of that. And it's also a message that like the communication aspect is like, we need to start getting up in these lying piece of shit people's faces, but keeping it at a level that and with verbiage that appeals to the masses, and just say, you're fucking wrong. Like,
yeah.
Democratic socialism is not socialism. These social welfare policies are not socialism, right? It's not this fearful thing, right? It's our tax money being used to benefit us. It's safety nets. It's what is that? Solidarity. It's paying your taxes not because you have to pay your taxes, but that your taxes could help the neighbor 3 doors down when he gets diagnosed with cancer. That your taxes can help the girl in the next town over when she gets in a really horrible car accident so that her mother can stay home from work with her. It's knowing that if you get pregnant and you want to stay home with your kids, that you can stay home with your kids and not have to worry about it. And then when you are able to go back to work, you can be blessed to be able to provide that to another family, right? That solidarity, that humanity, that American dogma almost has been completely eviscerated from this country. And one could argue it was because a black man had the audacity to get elected president of the United States.
Yeah.
Right. And that is, I think, the truly disheartening thing from all of this is the fact that white people seem to think that that somehow giving equality to minority populations, and I use that term in its broadest context, not just racial minorities. I'm talking about any type of minority, right? Like any type that is not like
women, LGBTQ,
any subgroup that is a minority within a larger group. That by somehow making everyone equal, you become less equal. So it's kind of like saying, I'm going to take my this barbell off this guy's chest and put it on my chest. That's not how it works. You take the barbell off the person's chest and you set it on the fucking ground.
Right. Or hold it together.
Yeah, and then put it back up on the rack or whatever, and whatever analogy or whatever anecdote we want to play here with that. You know what I mean? It's not you are less oppressed, so I become more oppressed. It's we all fight for everyone to be less oppressed. Right. Everyone has individual oppression that they have to face in different periods of their life. Like nobody is completely free of oppression. Nobody is completely an oppressor. And nobody is completely oppressed. Like it's a scale, right? And so many people can only see some of these things in black and white. And the reason that I think, you are so disheartened by this, and I'm taking a little bit more of a positively pragmatic approach, is that you don't see anybody that's willing to acknowledge that there's any shade of gray right now, right? And it's Orwellian, but it's also fascist in a way. And I hate, there's this common trope via conservatives of a certain educated variety. It's called reductio ad Hitlerum. And it was basically brought about when some of the more left people started to compare everything Trump did to Hitler. And they were saying, there's the reductio ad absurdum, which is basically if you reduce any argument and point out the absurdities that might be present, you can win. Like it just makes everything invalid and everything becomes absurd. So everything is basically useless or false. They were talking about it being reductio ad Hitlerum. And where I'm going with this is the fact that right now, and you see it on both sides, it's like, it was from Goebbels. It was a propaganda, but he said quite famously, accuse others of exactly what you are doing. And that is what we are seeing right now. There's a valid case of Trump raping and molesting a 13-year-old girl. So what do the Republicans and these troll farms in Russia and Iran do? They accuse Biden of being a pedophile. Right? With absolutely no substantiated evidence other than a few photos that might have shown he was a little bit liberal with invading other people's personal space.
Right.
I'm sorry, but invading other people's personal space is something called a mores, right? MORES. It's if you had any kind of collegiate sociology class or psychology class, you talk about this kind of stuff. And it's unwritten rules that are culturally or ethnically or religiously based. Just like I don't go up to a Orthodox Jewish person who's a female, and I don't touch her, right? Because that would be a huge violation of everything that they hold dear, that the women and men are separated and they have no contact until they're married, right? And that's when, so there's all these things that exist, but they don't make somebody a criminal, right?
Right.
That, violating a more does, standing backwards in an elevator doesn't make you a criminal. It might make you a little bit goofy, right? Just like, whatever.
I'm going to start doing that every time I get in an elevator.
I'm telling you, you're going to get some looks, man. Everyone's going to be like, why the fuck are you facing the back of the elevator, bro?
Turn around.
But it's like they accuse, there's valid accusations of Trump being a rapist and a child molester, so they accuse Biden of that. There's valid. There's actually legitimately settled legal complaints and legal cases that show that Trump and his family engaged in criminal acts with contributions to charities, and they accuse
the Clinton Foundation.
The same thing. The Clintons was that, and they're still trying to do it with Hunter Biden, and it's like, the Trump family is we're going to see a lot more when it comes out with their taxes, but it's like everything that we legitimately levy as a complaint against X, Y, and Z that Trump did, it becomes a whataboutism. It's like, well, what about this? What about that? Oh, wait, this, that, and the other. But what so many people don't realize is they are falling for interference and propaganda from countries who want us to destroy ourselves from the inside out. And if nobody knows this, the main reason why Putin hates the United States is because we destroyed his country.
Yeah.
Watch Charlie Wilson's War. Watch the movie. It's really great. You get to see Tom Hanks play an alcoholic, drug abusing senator from Texas who helps destroy the Soviet Union through a proxy war in Afghanistan with help from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Israel. It's an amazing movie. But the USSR was destroyed. Guess who Putin was a spy for in the KGB until he was about 27 years old?
Right.
The USSR. This guy has one of the biggest bones to pick out of anyone on the planet with the United States as an interfering agent in other countries' affairs. And believe me, I'm not saying the United States is great. Like, we have a lot that we have to atone for as a country.
Absolutely.
As it relates to international relations. But Putin is the enemy. He wants the United States to implode. He wants us in a civil war, right? None of these, like, it's just, it is. It's disheartening, but I look at it as a positive thing, right? Because you can't, most everyone who listens or is going to listen to this probably knows, since I've been on a few times now, that I'm a social worker, right? But it's like, one of the biggest things that we tell our clients, and most social workers will agree, is that you cannot grow if you don't experience pain. And I think collectively, whether it was through fear of oppression and persecution, or through fear of, becoming oppressed or persecuted, we Americans have gone through an insanely large amount of pain collectively on both sides the past 4 years. But what I also do know from a social work perspective is that pain can be healed, right? We just have to be willing to acknowledge some certain hard truths about the past 4 years. And I think some people, with Trump not being in the forefront anymore and carrying his bully pulpit, I think we're going to see a lot of this die down. Psychologically speaking, we cut the head off the serpent, right? Trump was the Republican Party. The Republican Party backed Trump. And now that I think that, once this election is officially called, which we can give the TEET audience an interesting insight as to why it might not have been called yet, per our wonderful friend on the right, Rush Limbaugh, after this segment. But
Medal of Honor recipient.
Medal of Freedom winner, Rush Limbaugh.
Freedom, yeah, Medal of Freedom, sorry.
What we can say is that there is a way forward, but some people have to get honest. Oh, that's what I was saying. I think what we have to see is a lot of moderate and even middle moderate, if that's even a thing, Republicans have to come out retroactively, and retroactively is better than never, but retroactively come out and denounce and repudiate what Trump did.
Yeah, I agree that we need to see that. And I agree with you. The as far as messaging goes, the Democrats have always had a problem with messaging. Like for instance, the abortion issue. Like, there are people that are way smarter than you and I so maybe they are surrounding these candidates. And why can't they come up with a solid message? I don't know. But it seems ridiculous to me that we're arguing the semantics of abortion when we could just go in there and say, we're not going to be able to convince everybody. But we can get to some people and say, look, this is not about having abortions. In fact, this is why you should vote for me, because I don't want a young woman to ever have to get to the decision that they have to have an abortion. And this is why we need better medical for people, healthcare for people, so that we can take care of the children and that they don't have to make a decision. Less women have to make a decision that's going to kill either themselves or the baby that they're carrying, a decision no one wants to make. If better healthcare leads to less of those instances, again, not perfect, but you're not going to convince everybody, because there's always going to be those cases that you can't control, but less of them. We want to provide sex education to these women so that they, and to men, so that they don't get into a position where they're not ready for a baby and have to make a choice. Like, that should be the message. Like, we have to pivot away from that. Well, you want all babies killed. And all we respond with was, well, women have a right to choose. We know we all believe that. All we're doing is when I repeat that, I'm the guiltiest of all. When I repeat that, the only person I'm convincing is you, that you don't need convincing. Mm-hmm. I'm not convincing anybody by saying a woman has the right to choose. It doesn't affect you whatsoever. Clearly it does affect them in some way. Emotionally, they're just tied to this. So we have to change the way that we approach these issues. And let's face it, there's a lot of one issue voters out there. Abortion, guns, the gun thing. I think we could do better. We could do better at messaging that instead of calling it gun control. Like, look, we are trying to make sure that the people that we both despise, the criminals, don't get a gun and ruin it for all of you law-abiding citizens. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to come after your guns. We're trying to prevent people from ruining the great pride that Americans have in owning guns. There's people out there trying to ruin that. We're trying to prevent them from owning guns. And that's it. Not you, them. I feel like there's some easy messaging that people in the Democratic Party are just missing. Anyway, I want to keep this to right around an hour, and I know you want to talk about this Rush Limbaugh thing, so you have the floor. Go ahead and explain this to our audience, because this would be great if this came out.
Yeah. So my I was telling Jeff at the beginning of the show, I'm in this text chain with a bunch of my college buddies, and one of them, his father and him are their family owns a machine shop, and my buddy is pretty liberal, or is kind of liberal in some issues, but primarily more conservative leaning. But he's pretty reasonable. He's one of my best friends. He's an awesome guy. I love him to death. But he runs this machine shop, and he has a lot of hardcore Trumpers that he works with. And apparently they listen to Rush Limbaugh. And at some point this morning, Rush Limbaugh came up with a really interesting idea as to, and I'm not going to call it a conspiracy theory, because I don't think it's not in that vein. It's not saying this is why this hasn't happened yet. I think he's just positing a theory as to why it hasn't happened yet. And the theory is such that Rush Limbaugh says that he thinks CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, all of the major mainstream news outlets that are the fake news media, as Trump likes to say, have not and are not calling the election for Biden, drum roll, because they want Fox to do it first. They want Fox, Trump's bread and butter, love it like he loves fucking cake, right? Or McDonald's or whatever he fucking likes. Filet of fish sandwiches, I think someone said was like his favorite meal.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, KFC, yeah. But that he has to live in perpetuity knowing that the news administration that he holds most dear to his heart and has been his strongest ally for the past 4 years, consistently churning out just vile, vitriolic propaganda and hateful rhetoric that backed up Trump, is gonna be the one that says, you fucking lost.
Get out. You're fired.
Get the fuck out. right? And
You know,
I love it. I love it. I mean, it would
it
be such sweet, delicious karma. Oh, like I just went from 6 to midnight, Jeff. I'm just thinking about this happening 6 to midnight, man.
what gets me excited about the possibility that this, uh, Rush Limbaugh is a vile piece of shit in his own right. But let's say he gets this one right. That means that at some point, Joe King, Jake Tapper, Rachel Maddow, Wolf Blitzer, Anderson Cooper. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones on the other networks, but
Joe
they're
Scarborough, Mika
right. Yeah, they're
Krasinski.
all in a room
Yeah.
together, cracking up about this. Like, guys, we're so close. Just hold on. I know you want to call it. Just a couple more days. Just let Fox is about to. They have to.
Yeah. They
Like,
have I don't know, man. I
it
just
would
think it
be
would be so amazing.
it would be the greatest conspiracy of all time. It would be the
Oh,
greatest last laugh ever. It would be it's such a great conspiracy because the only person it hurt and not physically is Donald Trump.
right.
And that's
Right.
it. Like that's it. That's a great. It's not even conspiracy. It's more of a practical joke.
Right. It's like a
And
last hurrah. It's like a senior prank. It's like a
yeah,
senior prank of
a big
someone
one. Yeah,
who doesn't give a shit about having to walk at graduation and get their diploma. It's
right,
someone who goes out with a bang,
right.
right? Like,
It says, fuck you.
oh,
I passed with C's. The closest
right.
thing to failing ever, and I got by you guys. It's fantastic, and that would be great. And let's face it, Fox, I believe, was the first to call Arizona, and
Arizona.
here we
Yep.
are. They might
And
even have to.
they still are, to my awareness, the only ones that have called Arizona.
The AP did. I don't know if they took it back, but
Did the AP too? Okay,
they
because
did. Yeah,
I usually utilize CNN for most of my online stuff.
me
That's
too.
for American affairs. I mean, most of the time I read news from like the Guardian, BBC, not the Hill, ProPublica. I think is one of the
Yeah,
biggest ones that I use for written news. But for live action news or breaking news, and for online stuff for U.S. affairs, I go to CNN.
yeah.
Um,
CNN's election coverage is. I don't watch news at all throughout the year. I watch it
mhm.
on election, and that's it. I read it like like you mentioned. CNN's coverage of the election has been far and away the best I have witnessed
Yeah.
by
Yeah,
far.
and it's I don't know. It's the math nerd in me that likes the election coverage, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it would be so amazing because it would be such an ego. It would be, if he is this fragile, grandiose narcissist. I mean, it could be something that sees him going into the loony bin. And not that I ever wish something like that on anybody, but if I would wish it on one person, it'd be Donald Trump.
and he already belongs there.
I
Plain and
mean, he's
simple.
just
For his own
if
good,
any
for his
if
own health, his
anyone
own
deserves
protection.
if anyone deserves their comeuppance, anyone, it would be him.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, it's just been so disheartening. Like at the end of the day, you and I get into conversations and arguments with all of our conservative friends on Facebook, and we throw around a lot of shit, and we get a lot of shit thrown around at us. But underneath all of that, like I have been in emotional pain, not because I'm a snowflake, not because my I'm butt hurt or because my feelings got hurt. It's because I care about like the other people in this country, red and blue. And I see it as Trump was hurting them too. He was just, that meme about the Turkish proverb, the axe that kept cutting down the trees, but they were convinced he was one of them because his handle was made of wood. Right.
Right.
Like that's how I saw Trump this whole past 4 years. And it's just a shame. And it hurts me that they weren't able to see that too. But I think, and I'm hoping that we start to see some movement there moving forward. Ben Sass already did it kind of before the election, kind of dropped the huge bomb that was that leaked call that we talked about on Tuesday. I just really, really hope that some of the more, under normal circumstances, moderate Republicans come out and say, look, we have to play party politics sometimes. And this was party politics. Like he was a terrible man, a terrible leader, a terrible administration. He did terrible things with terrible people. He broke the law. and
That's
he's
what I
gone.
want to hear.
So now let's sit down and make some shit happen. And that's where, with only even if we only get one seat in Georgia and it's a 50, I think at that point it would be a 52-48. I think the Dems will be able to get stuff done, because I think we'll pull over Ben Sass. I think we might be able to pull over Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. Now that they're also not afraid that they're going to not get elected because they aren't supporting Trump, I think we're going to see a lot more bipartisanship. Maybe it was this terrible, terrible split into this partisan divide that was a mile wide that will actually maybe bring us back together a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Call me pie in the sky, unicorn farts or whatever, but I'm a little hopeful right now.
Look, I hope you're right too, and let's face it, Susan Collins proved that she could go against Trump and work with him and still get reelected. And what we thought was going to be a tight race, and it really wasn't.
Yeah.
So she appealed to somebody. There's got to be those voters out there. These people can't be afraid. They have to be able to speak to their own districts and their own states without fear of pissing off Donald Trump and what that's going to, you never saw Barack Obama publicly shame Mitch McConnell.
Right.
He met with him. He talked with him. He tried. Now, Mitch McConnell publicly shames himself, but you never saw,
Right.
you never saw Obama. I forget who it was. That was like the one vote that kept us from getting a public option to the ACA, but it was a Democrat, and it was Lieberman or something like that. Maybe that's not the right one. Anyway, it was a red state Democrat. And voted against it. You don't see Obama or Biden shaming him publicly, saying he's a nasty man, anything like that. So even when we were so partisan that we were gridlocked under Obama, it still was politics as normal, if you will. Anyway, we'll leave it there because I could talk to you all night. I appreciate you having this conversation, and I'm going to use this as part of one of our bonus episodes coming up, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, man.
So we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on our normal. Tuesday is going to be a little bit different if you're listening to this, or if you're watching this on our live, or you're watching it back later on. Tuesday, we're going to kind of do a mashup of all our political coverage. So I don't know if you're interested in that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see from the time we started at 12 to the time we ended at I don't know, it's like 2 a.m. or something like that. How our moods have changed and gone back and forth. It'll be super interesting. But thanks for stopping by, checking us out. This has been the Ever Evolving Truth. For Jordan, Henning, I'm Jeff, and we'll see you soon.